She thought it was just another slap in a high school cafeteria, but that single hit exposed one of the darkest secrets hiding behind the walls of America's richest academy. What no one knew was that the quiet girl who got slapped was actually an undercover federal agent. Dramatic pause. And today, she's about to bring down an entire trafficking ring. What you're about to hear isn't just another story, it's a cry for justice. Before we begin, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who believes in truth, and subscribe so you never miss the stories that powerful people try to hide. Your voice, your comment, might be the reason more people learn the truth. Now, take a deep breath. It happened at exactly 12:37 p.m. inside the cafeteria of Ridgemont Academy, the most expensive private school on the East Coast. Hundreds of students talking, laughing, recording videos, until suddenly, smack! The sound echoed like a gunshot. Trays dropped. Conversations died. And all eyes turned toward Grace Sullivan, the quiet, new girl everyone thought was just another scholarship kid. Her cheek burned red, but her eyes? Cold. Calculated. Across from her stood Preston Blackwood, the golden boy of Ridgemont, son of billionaire Richard Blackwood, and the one student no one ever dared to challenge. He smiled with cruel, confident, knowing no teacher would dare punish him. Phones lifted. Cameras rolled. And while everyone expected Grace to cry, or run, or fight back, she just whispered, 3 minutes. Preston frowned. What did you say? Grace didn't answer. She simply touched her wristwatch, a subtle tap, almost invisible, and looked at the cafeteria clock above the door. 12:38 p.m. A quiet vibration buzzed beneath her sleeve. Somewhere outside that school, a black SUV engine started. Her voice stayed calm. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. The crowd laughed, thinking she was bluffing. But inside that laugh, she hid a secret. She wasn't there for classes. She was there for justice. Because that slap wasn't the beginning of her humiliation. It was the beginning of his downfall. 3 minutes, that's all she needed. And when that clock hit 0, the truth behind Ridgemont Academy would finally explode. 2 months before the slap, a black car glides through the iron gates of Ridgemont Academy. Inside, a young woman sits perfectly still, eyes fixed on the sprawling campus that looks more like a palace than a school. Her name, on paper, is Grace Sullivan, scholarship student, straight-A prodigy from Kansas. But the papers lie. Her real name is Agent Grace Sullivan, Delta Unit 77, Undercover Operations, Federal Bureau of Investigation. She's not here for grades. She's here because 3 girls, Melissa, Jennifer, and Ashley, disappeared from this very school. And the only thing they had in common was the same serpent symbol carved into their dorm walls. Grace unpacks quietly, setting a single framed photo on her desk, a smiling teenage girl. Her sister, Emma. Missing. Presumed dead. She takes a deep breath, opens her notebook, and begins writing. Mission Log 1, Objective, locate trafficking link inside Ridgemont. Cover identity, full scholarship student. Primary suspect, Preston Blackwood. Each night, she taps encrypted messages through her smartwatch, sending data back to headquarters. Every class, every hallway glance, every whispered rumor, recorded. Preston notices her. The confident smirk, the casual arrogance of a boy who's never heard the word no. One afternoon, she sees it, the silver ring on his finger. A serpent biting its own tail. The same mark from Emma's diary. She realizes in that moment, Preston isn't just a bully. He's the key. Grace lowers her gaze, hiding the spark of fury in her eyes. I found him, she whispers into her mic. The one who took her. From that day forward, Grace wasn't just undercover, she was out for blood. At Ridgemont Academy, secrets didn't hide, they wore uniforms. Every student walked with the same polished shoes, same expensive blazers, same practiced smile. But Grace saw the cracks. A quick glance here. A hushed conversation there. The subtle fear in some students' eyes when Preston Blackwood's name was mentioned. It started small, a ring. Silver. A serpent wrapped around a key. She'd seen it before, and evidence photos from a case the Bureau had quietly buried. Grace followed the symbol's trail, from jewelry to notebooks, from hallway graffiti to encrypted messages on hidden student forums. And every time, the same insignia appeared, the serpent key. Confirmed. Network active on campus. Preston is not alone. Late at night, Grace slipped through dorm hallways in silence, bypassing security cameras with ease. In one locked classroom, she found a small engraving under a desk, a serpent carved deep into the wood, marked with the initials MC. Melissa Chen. One of the missing girls. Grace traced the carving with her fingers, cold, deliberate, trembling slightly as the reality hit her. They were here, she whispered. All of them. Every clue led to the same group, the Elite Eight. Preston and his friends, heirs of America's richest families, operated under one unspoken rule: money cleans everything. But not this time. Grace checks the message. East Building. Basement access confirmed. Move carefully. Do not engage until we have eyes. She stares toward the window. The East Building, restricted area. That's where the serpent lives. For the first time, the hunters were being hunted. Midnight. Most of Ridgemont slept, but Grace Sullivan was wide awake. She moved like a shadow through the empty corridors, every step calculated, every sound measured. Her watch flickered, 2:14 a.m. The East Building loomed ahead. Off limits to students. No reason for anyone to be there after hours. Which meant it was the perfect place to hide something. Grace slipped inside. Dust. Concrete. Old files stacked against the wall, and beneath them, a metal hatch. Scratched. Worn. Used often. She crouched down, flashlight cutting through the darkness. A symbol. The serpent key. Grace pressed her earpiece. Phoenix to Cardinal. I've got something. Copy that, came the voice. Wait for backup. But Grace didn't wait. She couldn't. The sound of laughter echoed faintly from below, male voices. Preston's. Ryan's. Another she didn't recognize. She took a deep breath, lifted the hatch, and descended. The basement smelled of bleach and fear. A camera on a tripod stood beside an empty chair. Ropes. Zip ties. Broken phones and a box marked dispose. On the wall, dozens of photos. Missing girls. Melissa. Jennifer. Ashley. And one photo that stopped Grace cold. Emma Sullivan. Her sister. A sharp inhale. The kind that burns your lungs. She stepped closer, her voice trembling but steady. You monsters. She reached for her camera, snapped 3 quick photos. But before she could retreat, the sound of footsteps thundered above her. Someone had followed. Well, a voice sneered. The scholarship girl thinks she's clever. Preston Blackwood stood at the top of the stairs, smirking in the dim light. In that moment, Grace realized she hadn't just found the serpent's nest. She'd walked straight into its jaws. The slap echoed through the packed cafeteria like a gunshot. Grace Sullivan didn't move. Her cheek burned, but her eyes, cold, unflinching, locked on Preston Blackwood. Around them, 200 students froze. Phones raised. No one dared breathe. Grace glanced at her watch. 3 more minutes, she whispered. Preston's smirk faltered. What did you just say? 3 more minutes, she repeated, voice calm as a blade. And I'll have everything I need. Phoenix to Cardinal, she whispered into the collar mic. Target has taken the bait. Prepare for breach in T-10. Preston laughed, thinking it was fear. But it wasn't fear. It was countdown. Listen carefully, Kansas, Preston sneered, his voice rising. This school has its own laws, and the first law is broken, Grace cut in sharply. Just like Federal Code 1201. Silence. Interstate kidnapping, she continued. 25 years to life. The cafeteria buzzed in confusion. Preston blinked, unsure whether to laugh or panic. Grace raised her phone. The big screen flickered, Preston's private messages filled the air. New shipment ready Friday. Same pickup point. The color drained from his face. Grace pressed a button on her phone. Alarms erupted, but not fire alarms. Tactical sirens. T-minus 30 seconds, she said, turning to Preston with ice in her voice. You just assaulted a federal witness. His hand shot forward, aiming for another slap. But Grace caught his wrist midair. A twist, a shift, and Preston dropped to one knee, screaming in pain. For 3 weeks, he thought she was prey. But Grace Sullivan had just become his reckoning. When justice comes, it never knocks. Red and blue lights painted the cafeteria walls like war colors. Students scattered as tactical boots thundered down the hallway. Preston froze, still on his knees, clutching his twisted arm. His confident smirk was gone. Now there was only panic. Grace stepped back, voice calm and commanding. FBI. Everyone down, hands visible. The agents stormed in, black vests, laser sights, sharp commands. Suspect in custody. Target secured. Preston shouted, his voice cracking. You can't do this. My father's the dean, he'll bury you. Grace turned, eyes like steel. Then I'll dig him up. Agents handcuffed Preston, while others swept through the hall. Students filmed everything, history in 4K. Grace's earpiece crackled. Cardinal to Phoenix, the basement's clear. We've got them. All of them. Her eyes softened for a moment, relief breaking through the storm. She whispered back, barely audible. Tell Washington. Emma's name can finally rest. As Preston was dragged past, he looked up at her, trembling. You think you've won? He hissed. There's more. You have no idea what's buried under this school. Grace leaned closer, her voice calm and cold. Then you'd better pray I never start digging. In one night, the lies of Ridgemont Prep unraveled. The hidden doors. The missing girls. The serpent key was broken. But justice was only the beginning. Some secrets aren't meant to be uncovered. But Grace Sullivan was never good at following orders. 48 hours after the raid, Ridgemont Prep stood silent. Police tape fluttered in the wind. Classrooms sealed. The school that once prided itself on honor and tradition now felt like a tomb. Grace walked the empty corridors with a flashlight, her badge clipped openly now, FBI Special Agent Sullivan. The floor creaked beneath her boots as she returned to the East Building, where it all began. Her partner's voice came over comms. Phoenix, we've got clearance. Go ahead. Copy that, Grace whispered. She knelt near the metal hatch again. But this time, she wasn't alone. 2 forensic agents pried open the floor, revealing a deeper tunnel system. The air that escaped was stale, wrong. They descended. The deeper they went, the colder it got. Walls carved from stone, lined with strange carvings, serpents, sigils, Latin inscriptions. At the end of the tunnel stood a large metal door, rusted but intact. On it, the same serpent insignia from the files. Grace took a slow breath. Open it. Inside, old desks, photographs, documents sealed in glass. A logo of Blackwood Foundation for Youth Development. Preston's family. Her flashlight caught a single name on a report. Emma Sullivan, Subject 04. Grace's hand trembled. They used them, she whispered. They used kids. Photos covered the walls, not just of missing girls, but of donors, politicians, and school administrators. Oh my God, one agent muttered. This wasn't just a trafficking ring. It was a recruitment program. Grace thought she'd cut off the serpent's head. But now she knew it had 1,000 more hiding in plain sight. Truth doesn't set you free. Sometimes it locks you in. 3 days after the tunnel discovery, Grace sat in a federal safe house, exhausted, eyes red from sleepless nights. On the table in front of her, a black binder stamped Blackwood Files, classified. She flipped through page after page, donor lists, offshore accounts, coded messages. Every thread led higher and closer to the Bureau itself. "You've done enough," Agent Sullivan, her superior, Director Haynes, had told her earlier that morning. "The Bureau will take it from here." But Grace heard what he didn't say. "The Bureau will bury it from here." She connected a secure flash drive, transferring every file she'd copied from the school servers. A video folder appeared. She clicked it open. Preston Blackwood sat in a chair, blindfolded, during an interrogation. "Who funded it?" Grace's voice echoed in the recording. Preston laughed weakly. "You still don't get it, do you? The serpent doesn't die. It just sheds its skin." She froze. In the background of the video, a voice spoke, distorted but familiar. "Director Haynes. Make sure the files are moved before she sees them." Grace's pulse spiked. "He knew," she whispered. "He knew everything." She yanked the USB, packed the binder, and reached for her gun. A knock at the door. "Agent Sullivan?" Silence. Another knock, harder. She backed toward the exit, whispering into her comm. "Cardinal, they're compromised. Initiate burn protocol. I'm going dark." Grace had uncovered the truth. But now, the truth was hunting her. They took her sister. They took her peace. But they made one mistake, they left her alive. 12:47 a.m. Washington, D.C., Federal Bureau Headquarters. Grace Sullivan stood across the street, drenched in rain, her reflection flickering in the neon lights. In her hand, the Blackwood Files. In her ear, silence. Cardinal was gone. The Bureau's communication grid had been hijacked. She had one shot. One night. Inside, Director Haynes sat in his glass office, reviewing a document labeled Operation Serpent Renewal. Grace walked through the main doors like a ghost. Security scanned her badge. Green light. Still valid. On the 27th floor, she paused outside Haynes' office. Through the glass, he looked calm, too calm. "You shouldn't be here," he said, without turning. "Neither should the truth," she replied. She dropped the USB drive on his desk. It slid to a stop near his pen. Every file. Every transfer. Every name. It's all on there. Haynes sighed. "You think the world wants the truth, Agent Sullivan? They want comfort. Control. Order." "No," she said quietly. "They want justice." He reached for his gun. But Grace was faster. One shot shattered the glass wall behind him. Papers flew. The siren screamed. Grace stood over him, calm, unblinking. "For Emma," she whispered. She uploaded the files to every major news outlet, live feed, unstoppable. By sunrise, the Bureau would fall. The Blackwoods would burn. And somewhere out there, a sister finally found peace. Because Grace Sullivan never stopped digging. They called her a traitor. A fugitive. A ghost. But the truth? She was never any of those things. She was the reckoning they didn't see coming. 3 months after the Blackwood leak, the world had changed. Dozens of arrests. Congressional hearings. News anchors whispering her name like a legend. Grace Sullivan. The Bureau called her rogue. The people called her a hero. Somewhere in the Montana mountains, far from the cameras, Grace stood on a cliff overlooking a quiet valley. Her hair moved with the wind, sunlight warming her face for the first time in years. In her hands, a worn locket, inside, a picture of Emma. She smiled, faintly. You can rest now, she whispered. It's over. But then, her encrypted phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. Phoenix, a man's voice said quietly. This is Cardinal. You might want to see this. Static. Then, a live satellite image appeared. A facility. Hidden deep beneath another private academy. The insignia, a serpent, reborn. Grace closed her eyes, a faint smirk forming. Guess it's true what they say, she murmured. You can't kill the serpent. But you can make it fear the fire. Grace Sullivan disappeared that day. No records. No trace. But whispers say, when the corrupt rise again, the phoenix follows.